So I will start, as is usually my way, by giving you just a quick introduction to MediWales. So our slide manager for today is Sam. So Sam, if you could move to my next slide and the next one. And so I think to a lot of you who are on the online, then you will know exactly who MediWales are. But for those of you who are new to the network, MediWales is the life science network for Wales. We are an organisation that is owned and run by its, it says 180 members on this slide here, but we're pushing towards 200 now. And those organisations make up, as you can see from the slide, industry, academia and clinical organisations, all either based in Wales or with a particular interest in working with Wales. So you can see by the makeup there, 51% of those organisations are Welsh life science companies. So we're very much an industry-led organisation, but we're very much strengthened by the fact that we have a strong research membership. That'll be the leading research universities, university departments, research centres in Wales. Our 9 NHS health boards that are members of MediWales and very actively involved, and the allied sectors, professional services, law, intellectual property, design services, all going to make up the Welsh life science sector, the community in all of its richness. And our job is to help those people to network, help them to engage with each other. And then just a small contingent of organisations who are from outside Wales, who also maybe they spend an awful lot of time in Wales because they're involved in research and development, engaging with our universities, or who are partners with our companies. And not to mention the one or two government organisations, so Welsh Government, Life Science Hub Wales and Health and Care Research Wales, who go to make up our government organisations. So that's important because we always have a partnership approach with government. We try and advise, we try and make sure that government is aware of the needs of the sector and aware of the needs of industry. So a full community of organisations made up by MediWales. As most of you will know as well, MediWales delivers the networking activity to that community through publication of magazines, both online and in print, and both to Wales for the Welsh community, our LifeStories publication, and we also take responsibility for a publication that goes out across the UK and internationally called Life Science Industry News. We run a number of events in more normal times. You will have expected to have been to our Connects event so far this year, and you will be looking forward to our UK Health Tech and our annual awards to finish the year. Clearly, we're trying to manage those in the same way as other organisations through online contact, and that presents additional challenges to a network, obviously, but it also presents tremendous opportunities, like the opportunity to do today's event and to attract really high quality speakers and presentations through the media of Zoom. So we're driving forward in that respect. We carry on with our government advisory activity, and we also carry on with our one-to-one collaboration and building partnerships. We're probably more needed now than ever, because organisations can't just jump in the car and go for meetings, and they can't just go to events and conferences. So they really do need those connecting organisations in the sector in order to bring people together, to provide referrals and to provide introductions. So much as we've all been working from home, working remotely, and working in different parts of the country, MediWales has been really busier than ever during the lockdown period. And so it's a real pleasure. It has been a challenge. It's been a terrible tragedy for some people, and that shouldn't be forgotten. But it is genuinely a pleasure to be able to present the success stories and the ways in which our industry sector have been responding to that challenge. Now, I'm going to introduce our first speaker shortly, and I believe that Santi Dominguez, who's on the program to be our first speaker, is a little late. So I've lined up Michael Gratz from Inature, Chief Scientific Officer, and Michael shouldn't be too surprised to be bumped up the program just slightly. And just a heads up to the other speakers that the same might happen depending on whether Santi can arrive later on. But we'll move forward with Michael Gratz from Inature on how about self-administering a vaccine using a microneedle patch. So, Michael, the microphone and the camera is all yours, sir.
Thank you. Right, yeah, I can see myself. Gwen, thank you for the introduction. Thank you all for spending the time listening to me. Sam, I take it you're driving my slides. So can I get the next slide, please? And the next one. So a question was posed a couple of weeks ago, quite specifically on, well, how do you vaccinate 7 billion people? Well, actually 7.5 or 7.7, depending on which numbers you consider. And I'll get there in a moment. I just need to sort of put in a couple of caveats before I start. The first one is, I'm not going to be commenting on the 140 plus vaccines that are currently in clinical development. I'm not in a position to do so. We are obviously working with those developers in order to bring a vaccine patch to the market. And I'm not really in a position to comment on the efficacy of those vaccines, not as yet. But what I will say, which I think is really important, that there is data from both Oxford as well as coming out of Germany that suggests that of the patients that have recovered from the SARS-CoV-2 virus infection, only 15% of them exhibit any long-term immunity. And that would suggest that any vaccination program that is being developed will actually need more than a single dose per patient. So if I could get the next slide, please. So let's just look at this. As of the 1st of September, we had 7.5 billion people on the planet, 67 million people in the UK, and about 3.2 million in Wales. So if you just want to vaccinate each one of these once, well, if you vaccinate one person on Earth every minute for 24 hours a day, you would need 14,000 person years to vaccinate everybody once. But more realistically, we're not going to vaccinate, one person per minute 24/7. But if you had 100,000 healthcare professionals doing this vaccination, vaccinating one person every 10 minutes, which is approximately the average for a GP vaccinating a person here in the UK, then this army of 100,000 healthcare professionals would need about 4 years and 4 months to reach everyone. And I'm not talking about the logistics of reaching everyone. I'm just talking about actually vaccinating, the process of vaccinating each person. So if you expand that or distill that down to the UK, the same time period, one person every 10 minutes for an 8-hour day, you'd need 30,000 healthcare professionals vaccinating for 46 days or 1.5 months non-stop to reach the entire population. And again, that would have to happen more than once by the sounds of things. Or if we consider here in Wales, if we can get to everybody, rural considerations not being considered, we would need 3,000 healthcare professionals vaccinating non-stop for 22 days. So we are talking about a huge logistical challenge. And I think this is where our suggestion of vaccinating at home makes some sense. So if I can get the next slide, please. So we have a couple of challenges why the current system is inefficient. And the first one I've just mentioned, just purely on time. The other one is we don't have sufficient healthcare professionals at the moment to just look after our population, never mind take on this huge extra role. There is, the whole discussion on having sufficient vaccines. And can I pause there for a moment? In the press this morning, it was stated that the Australian government, and that was the most recent figure I could get, have just secured 85 million doses. But that would suggest that for a population of 25 million and a proposed coverage of 95% of that population, they're going to vaccinate at least 3 times. Are we actually going to be making sufficient vaccines? An answer for a wiser person than me to, or should I say, it's a question that needs to be posed to a wiser person than me. And then we have, 10% of the population is actually, has a needle phobia, and an extra 20% of the population are afraid of needles. Not even taking into consideration, children. So you have an inherent sort of physical challenge. The other thing that is I think, which is staggering, that as late as 2 years ago, the World Health Organization indicated that 50% of all vaccines were being wasted, mainly because of logistics. Now, self-immunization has actually been suggested on more than one occasion, and I suppose in a way it's a trialed clinical model, because there is a fair number of the population that treat themselves already with a needle. Take the diabetic population who have to treat themselves with insulin. So treating yourself at home is not something that's new. And then, there is a challenge if you go beyond what I'm going to call the developed world, having to prepare a vaccine, having multiple components, both, a vial with vaccine, a vial with diluent, a needle and syringe, that poses a challenge in itself. So if I can get the next slide. So there is actually quite a lot of work going on at the moment on how my phone and my everything are connected. So there is a whole group really between the Gates Foundation and the World Health Organization and the Global Vaccine Alliance that have been looking at this exact logistics question. And their most recent report, which is called VIPS, or the Vaccine Innovation Prioritization, has microneedles, the technology that we're developing in Swansea, as their number one innovation to deliver vaccines globally. And it's, I suppose, from our perspective, really validating the technology that we're developing. I'm going to ask you to skip the next slide, please, Sam. So what we've done in Swansea is we've actually taken technology from the electronics industry and we've modified it in order to print these microstructures that you see in the images on the right-hand side. And these are already coated with a coating that contains a protein. And we print them at the same speed that electronics components can be printed. So actually our printing process is, we need 5 passes of a printer to print the microneedle that you see, and every pass is 19 seconds in length. So if you put 5 machines of these printers in sequence, then you are printing 1 patch every 19 seconds. And as we print 2,500 square centimeters at a time, we're actually printing 600 patches every 19 seconds. And this is not a pipe dream. We actually have a micro structure patch in the market for cosmetics. So we're actually used to producing these things at mass production, not quite, the numbers that we would need for COVID, but we are very comfortable in mass producing and having already trialed these products. And if we do things right, we can produce over 200,000 patches and a month. And more, I suppose the upshot of this is a microneedle patch that can deliver a dose of vaccine for coronavirus is going to be about the size of a postage stamp. So having a postage stamp that gets sent to your home is going to probably reach you a lot quicker than having to go see a healthcare professional. And can I get the next slide, please? And I suppose this is probably my favorite image in the bottom right-hand corner that gives you an idea of what that microneedle looks like, really giving you a sort of size perspective with that finger in the background. The microneedles are actually less than 1 millimeter in length. And when they're coated, they will reach your immune system in your skin, which means that by having a postage stamp sized patch that is coated with the correct vaccine, that all you have to do is apply to your forearm and never draw blood, is probably an innovation that has a lot of legs, not only for a coronavirus vaccine, but for any other vaccine that could prevent diseases. I've got 2 more slides. I hope I have enough time. I will jump through them quickly. So if we can get the next one. And so again, whilst we have a cosmetic product in the market, we have actually taken our technology into clinical trials. So if anyone is interested, I'm very happy to share the results with you. They are on clinicaltrials.gov, but we have had a MHRA approved trial with our technology run actually through the University of Bristol, but in Cardiff, with no adverse events, showing that the technology can deliver a drug, in this case in the oral cavity, very successfully. And last but not least, please, my last slide. So yeah, I've taken you through a very rapid view of opportunity, but having a postage stamp patch that you can send to the patient is probably a lot more effective than a needle and syringe. It does allow you to treat yourself in the home. You don't have to break your isolation in any way. It has a major impact in terms of our health system. And to be fair, the NHS actually looked at this technology over 10 years ago, quite specifically for the flu vaccine. So this isn't even something new that is something new to the NHS. It's relatively cost effective because microneedles require less of a vaccine dose than a standard dose. You are able to improve the supply chain because you're moving 1 patch rather than 2 vials, a needle and syringe. And as I said, there are lots of future opportunities for other vaccines, and we're currently working on some other drugs. So I hope you all cross fingers for us that our first clinical investigation, which is going to start in late October, is successful. And with that, I thank you.
So Michael, thank you very much for that. That was incredibly interesting, and you're right, that image just showing the scale in relation to a finger is really does say an awful lot. So your timing was also impeccable. So we do have time for a question. I noticed there's no questions in the chat yet. If anyone has any questions, then if you can pop them in the chat, because we're expecting over 40 people today, so we're not opening the microphones willy-nilly. But if you pop them in the chat, then we'll make sure that we ask the panelists either now or at the end. I've definitely got a question for you, Michael. It's would the introduction of microneedles present any additional regulatory barriers to entry, and what would your solution be for that?
There's an answer. Well, there's an answer that has 2 parts to that, Gwen. If the vaccine is developed from the beginning with the microneedle as the delivery mechanism, then there is no further requirement for any regulatory development. And as per the MHRA, we've asked that question, because then the delivery system is part of the developed vaccine. If we are talking about a vaccine that has already been developed and where the primary mechanism of immunization is a needle and syringe, then we would have to do a short bridging study to show that we are going to be raising the same immune response. And it would be an abridged filing to say that you've got a new method of administration.
Great. So you're on the subject. That is really interesting to me, but I'm going to move on because we've got a number of questions coming in now. So Siofra Boyle says, how do you dispose of the microneedle patch? Is it in the same way as the traditional needles are disposed of?
There, the answer is quite a definitive no, because the patch is effectively like a plaster. There are two avenues of investigation at the moment. The simplest one is that you may actually be able to dispose of it just straight into your normal landfill waste, because you're not actually expecting to draw any blood. And then there's the whole argument regarding that there's probably more biological matter on a plaster that you put into the bin than on a patch. The second one is that we are working on a way to potentially cover the microneedles with a different form of tape, which would then effectively prevent them from being reused. And that tape would then come with the patch as it's sent to you, and then it most definitely can go into landfill.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, Madeline also asked the same question, but she also says, how long does the patch need to be on the skin?
So the coating dissolves in about 2 minutes, but we would probably suggest that you need the patch on the skin for about 5 minutes, just to make sure that you've actually, after dissolution of the coating, deposited everything at the correct height in the skin. But more than 5 minutes is not envisaged, and our competitors that are developing patches across the globe are all touting between 2 and 5 minutes.
Thank you. And Giancarlo Diana says, is it possible to make the patch permanent and load the drugs easily, or is it single use, I think is the question.
No, in this case, the patches would be single use, and that's, although there is some development, but not for vaccines, that we're working on at the moment for a longer wear time, but in all cases, the patch will be single use. And
then I'm just trying to fit in as many questions as possible, Michael. You're getting quite a lot of interest here. If successful, how long until it's available across Wales? That's from Lizzie Thomas. I bet you wish you could answer that one.
Yeah, how long is a piece of string? I think it really comes down to, our target is to be in trial before the end of the year with a vaccine. Although we are starting with the flu vaccine rather than with COVID, because we have access to the flu vaccine and no one has currently made a COVID vaccine available to us to trial, although we are in discussion with 2 British groups, you decide who they are, to coat 2 different styles of vaccines to get them into animal trial before the end of the year too. And then it would keep, if everything falls into line and the stars align our way, it will be sometime late next year. It's not going to go any faster than that, with thanks to the regulatory hurdles. Although considering some of the, I hate using the term shortcuts, but the avenues that have been found by regulatory authorities to bring products to the market more rapidly, we might be talking earlier than the end of next year.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And I'm going to bring an end to those questions now, but I'll drop any of the other ones into the chat for you to answer by chat if you like, Michael, because there was one or two others. So I'm gonna move on now to Chris Mortimer from Hybrisan. And this is probably a story you'll have noticed in the press and on the TV over the last couple of weeks. So planes to people, the Hybrisan response to COVID-19. So Chris, are you there?
Hi. Hello.
Hi Chris, we can hear you and we can see you.
Excellent. If you bear with me, I'm just going to share my screen.
Okay, no problem.
Oh. Yeah, it's not allowing me to.
Oh, Sam is on the case as we speak.
Cool. Excellent.
There you go. You're all up and running.
Okay, so hi, my name is Chris Mortimer. I'm Technical Director at Hybrisan. So just a little bit of background before we start. So thank you for welcoming me. We're a small business based in Port Talbot. We were founded in 2013. We specialise in the fields of nanotechnology, antimicrobials and biofouling solutions. Myself in particular, I'm an expert in antimicrobial materials. I got a PhD from Swansea University and I started off my sort of postdoctoral career at Hybrisan. So we do a vast range of things. We started off our days back way before 2013, where we developed products for aviation, where there's a particular need for solutions to decontaminate in our aircraft to a very dirty place. And the solutions need to be safe, multi-material compatible, work in conjunction with all of the various different composites and materials found on an aircraft. So that was the sort of start of the business, and the technology's changed somewhat since then, but that's still the roots of what the business is around. So as I said, my expertise is in electrospinning. I produce nanofibers from the antimicrobial, and I've recently been working on, and we are doing a couple of projects at the moment on face mask materials for reusables, but that's not the focus of my discussion today. Today I'm talking about our sanitizer, antimicrobial technology, which is a non-alcohol alternative to sanitation. No bleaches or anything like that, and something that's multi-material compatible. So this was something that we developed in response to the virus of sorts. The technology dates back to the aviation days, but we took the challenge upon ourselves right at the start of the pandemic to re-engineer it slightly. So we've got a range, but within the range of the hand sanitizer, which we had to basically formulate or reformulate our technology slightly to allow it to fit in with the current EU BPR guidelines for hand sanitizers. So it's alcohol free. It's been optimized. So the difference with our product compared to most is that we don't just throw the kitchen sink at it, that you haven't got as much of everything as you can in there. We've got a few key active ingredients, one of which is proprietary. But what we've done over the last sort of 5-6 years is really develop the technology. So the concentrations of the active ingredients are significantly less than anything else on the market. And this doesn't mean it doesn't work as well. In fact, in the testing we've done, it works as good as or better. And the key is that we want to get a really broad spectrum of bacteria, but we want to be able to be used on multiple materials. I'm talking chromes, your stainless steels, your screens. I mean, if you just think about a first-class seat on an aircraft, it's got a wide range of materials. You've got people traveling it, you've got coughing and spluttering, you've got high risk of infection, forgetting about the air system and the risk of transmission, particularly at the moment during a pandemic. You've got to be able to rapidly sanitize these materials safely without damaging them, without damaging your leathers, your chromes, your carbon fibers, your stainless steels. But also you've got to work. It's got to be able to kill 99.999 as a minimum. And it's got to be able to really target that biofilm, which is the root of all evil. So as I said, it's multi-material compatible. It's got multiple mechanisms, so it can work against enveloped and non-enveloped viruses, bacteria, fungi, and spores, which is very sort of crucial, particularly when you're in the medical sector, and some of the outbreaks that may cause diarrhea, as I'll mention in a second. So it works through cell membrane damage, DNA interference, specifically focused around the virus and bacteria, colonization prevention. So it's got a residual protection. In between uses, it leaves a residual coating so that it basically can continue to work, stop bacteria from recontaminating. And as I said, one of its key USPs, particularly pre-COVID, was the fact that it can stop biofilm. It can also penetrate the biofilm structure and disrupt it, which is a key when you're looking in the medical devices sector, and particularly in one of our areas, which is wound dressings. So moving on, I mean, obviously everyone's aware of the new norm. Sanitization is a key to everything, particularly when you're talking about reopening places, any public facing place. You've got to make sure that the hand sanitation, everything is key. So the sanitation of rooms, touch points, shopping trolleys, everything needs to be considered. Everything needs to be sanitized multiple times during the day, and it needs to be done quickly, safely, without damaging people and without damaging equipment. So strict hygiene policies are required, and that's something that we're trying to do with and help out. So obviously, when this pandemic started, the World Health Organization advised everyone, look, you need to use a 60% plus alcohol if you want to sanitize your hands. Now, this is one of our biggest battles with a non-alcohol product, but the facts of the matter are alcohol has been used for years. It does eliminate bacteria and viruses from hands and surfaces, and it is effective. It's not effective against certain bacteria and certain viruses, like non-enveloped, but it does work. And when you're talking about SARS-CoV-2, which is an envelope virus, it works by a physical mechanism. It disrupts the wall, gets rid of that envelope, so it deactivates the virus. So there's no doubt that it works, but there are many flaws. And the flaws are, there's a number, I mean, 60% minimum is a very high active concentration. If you look at our active ingredients, we've got less than 0.1% active. So there's a lot of water in our product. So therefore, I mean, people are familiar with water, it's a safe product. Effectiveness. So when it comes to envelope viruses, I mean, norovirus is a good example, and spore-forming bacteria, C. diff is a very good example, one of the biggest causes of diarrhea and stomach bugs. Alcohol just isn't effective. This is well cited in the literature. It's one of the key flaws. Alcohol is volatile. You use it, sanitize your hands, it does its job. It evaporates straight off, so you're left with no protection. So as soon as you've used it, you get your bacteria, virus levels down in your hands. You've basically just left a nice clean surface for recontamination. pH levels of alcohol gels generally around 3 to 4, so they're acidic. And obviously, as a result of that, they're corrosive, so they're not compatible with a range of materials, which also comes into the containers. So containers, special containers are required due to its ability to attack certain plastics. When it comes to hand sanitization, alcohols can obviously, they wash away the natural oils on the skin, cause them to dry and crack. I'm sure everyone's familiar. If you go into shops and supermarkets and places like that, generally they have an alcohol. It may smell like brandy at the moment, but that's another matter. But you'll sanitize your hands and it'll evaporate off, and that does leave you with a dry hand. You do get products that have got things to compensate for that, but an alcohol product on its own, you've got a high risk of contact dermatitis. These products are highly flammable, highly toxic. Obviously, there's a number of warning labels that come attached to alcohol. Two of the key ones, obviously, it's flammable. The other one, it says keep out of reach to children. So I think for children to be recommended to use alcohol is not a sensible approach. So when you move on, so why would you go for an alcohol-free product like ours? So like I said, our product uses a number of different mechanisms. It includes disrupting the cell wall, so the envelope around envelope viruses, but it can also disrupt the cell DNA, and it can disrupt spores. So it means it's got a broader spectrum of kill. We've got evidence to suggest that it works quicker. So it works very instantaneously. You get at least a 4 log reduction instantly, and obviously a greater log reduction up to 6, 7 afterwards. It's effective against envelope viruses, so it does work against SARS-CoV-2. There's no doubt about it. Now, there's nothing that says that you can stop COVID-19, but no one can say that without a vaccine. but it certainly inactivates SARS-CoV-2, and it can reduce the risk of spreading of the pathogen. But also, it can also target non-envelope viruses. That includes norovirus, and then you can also look at spore-forming bacteria like C. diff. Once it works, the water evaporates off, it dries fairly quickly, but it leaves a residual protection. So in between uses, it does protect, and that's where our strap line, protect not infect, comes from. And passing on protection not infection is one of our strap lines. So basically the idea is you treat a surface, you treat your hands, when you touch them, the protection can pass between. It's non-corrosive, non-damaging to all materials, particularly engineering materials, so you don't have to worry about your expensive equipment, which is obviously key in business. Due to the multi-platform technology, the same product can be applied to surfaces and hands. The point I mentioned with children, alcohol, there is evidence of children being poisoned by alcohol hand sanitizers. There's also a fire risk. There's a risk in prisons. There's also a risk in alcohol rehabilitation centres. There are certain environments where alcohol just isn't suitable. And that's not to say they're the niche marketplaces alcohol-free products should be used. My personal view is that they should be a lot more adopted, and they should be used much more widely. So the range of applications, our product comes scented and unscented, both as a liquid and a gel. We can have a foaming hand sanitizer or a gel, and you can have a liquid spray. So it can be used for hand sanitization, but one of the keys is the sort of the wide multi-platform approach. You can literally use it on anything. You can sanitize surfaces, rooms. You can use spray, like a trigger spray.
1 minute, Chris.
Yeah, no worries. You can
Thank
use
you.
fogging, and you can use airless spraying, which is a technique used in spray painting to rapidly sort of spray rooms and things like that. Well, our product works through that. It's naturally charged. It's got a potentiostatic charge, so it'll naturally get attracted to surfaces, which makes it ideal. So in terms of a return to normality, or what is the new norm, Hybrid are working with a number of businesses up and down both Wales and across the UK and further afield, where we can really help people to identify the key areas they need to be decontaminating, how they do it, sort of regimes that should be put in place, and really helping people get back into the workforce, getting back into schools, buses, gyms, clean rooms, production lines, offices, hotel rooms. By using a complete range of our products, we can basically offer the customer an ongoing residual protection without deteriorating or damaging their equipment. So that's everything. I welcome any questions. Contact details are below. It is worth noting we are working with a company, Gwalia Healthcare, which we've just teamed up with, who are helping us with distribution, with making it available in a wider range of pack sizes, all the way from 50 ml up to 5 litres.
That's great, Chris. Thank you for that. Thank you for being so concise with all of that information. So we've got one question in the chat. It says it's from Andrew Davidson. The question is, how long does the residual protection last?
There's a lot of information. There's a lot of debate at the moment. There's a lot of companies making claims where they say that they'll last 7 days, 30 days on a surface. We've done thorough sort of investigation of this for our product, and we found that our product does work for as long periods of time as the 30-day claiming products do, but we don't make a claim of time. One of the biggest factors as to how long a product lasts, there's 2 factors. One, how clean that surface is that it's been applied to. If you apply it to a perfect surface, then you're going to get a longer protection than if you apply it to a really dirty one. The second factor is you cannot control exactly how many pathogens it sees and things like that, and that's one of the biggest factors. I mean, how much traffic does the area get? How much contamination does it receive in that period? That's one of the key contributors to how long it lasts. So the answer isn't a concise one, in a sense that I can't say it lasts this long, but what I can say is that it does last for a period, but it very much depends on the environment. And generally what we'll do is we'll advise customers based upon their circumstances. So, I mean, generally these sorts of products should be used daily, but when you've got high contact areas, you're looking at topping up in between the big decontamination on high contact points.
That's great. Thank you for that. So Siofra Boyle says, how does the cost of your product compare to the alcohol alternatives?
So we're very cost competitive. We're very lucky that we haven't had to raise or adapt our prices during the pandemic. This is partly through the supply chain that we've got, but also due to the fact that the active ingredients we use didn't increase in price rapidly like that of alcohol. So in terms of non-alcohol versus alcohol, generally non-alcohol products are a similar sort of price range. Some are more expensive. We see ourselves as being considerably cheaper than some of the alternatives on the market in non-alcohol. But we are also cheaper than alcohol or thereabouts. I think there is a bit of a stigma around alcohol products, and there is still a bit of education required to sort of get people converted and to understand that these products are as good, if not or better than alcohol alternatives. But they don't come at an increased price. The price benefit, the fact that there's such low active ingredients, the biggest part of our cost is the years of development that's gone into it.
Thank you very much for that, Chris. So just catching up on some of the Q&A. I mean, if you want to if you want to pass on a question to Chris that during the other speakers, then I'll try and catch up with everybody. So Joanne Sullivan asked Michael Gratz why the microneedle technology wasn't used during the flu vaccine, and Michael has replied that it was a problem of scale of manufacture, which was able to meet demand, and he puts in that we seem to have cracked both the scale and cost, which has made our approach interesting for the payers. So originally the issue was scale, but they seem to have cracked that. So just catching up on the questions. So Chris, thank you very much for that. Any more questions for Chris, just put them in the chat, and we will catch up with them. We've gone from vaccines to hygiene control, and so now we're going to move to one of the other major areas that has been in the news and challenging the industry over the last few months. So we're going to go to Peter Corish of BBI Group, and Peter's going to talk to us about the UK Rapid Test Consortium perspectives on a rapid serology test development for COVID-19. So Peter, are you there? Have you opened Peter's mic?
Hello there. Hello, Gwen. Have you got me now?
Yeah, we can hear you and see you now, Peter. Thank you.
Fantastic. I'm not sure which one of those is the better. Really appreciate Mary Wales and Debbie and yourselves' invitation to be able to speak to you today. I think you just highlighted there, I mean, I don't think we've ever seen a situation worldwide where so many different sectors and subsectors of the healthcare industry and med device have really needed to pull together. So happy to present and just give some insight and perspectives and retrospectives on BBI's involvement from the in vitro diagnostic side, and in particular, rapid point of care. Sam, you're kindly driving the slides for me. If you can actually skip on 2 more slides. Excellent, superb. Just a little bit of background on BBI, really to frame it as to how we came and where we positioned ourselves and were drawn into UK testing for COVID. So we're a leading provider of lateral flow point of care rapid development services and manufacture. And we've been doing that now for 3 decades, originally as a spin out from Cardiff University. But now we serve tier 1, tier 2, whole number of customers within diagnostics and also non-clinical areas, food testing, veterinary, etc. And we do that with a fantastic team of approaching 500 people out of 5 countries, headquartered here in Crumlin in South Wales, but also with facilities over in the US, in China, and more recently through acquisition in Germany as well. We're ISO 13485 is the standard for diagnostics, and really what we offer is a complete end-to-end supply of both critical reagents for all immunoassays, whether they're lab-based or point of care. We're also with a speciality in lateral flow pregnancy-based style platform tests as well. In addition to that, we also have a digital offering, a smartphone reader for rapid tests called Novarum. And the reason why this is particularly relevant now is I think we've seen such a focus on primary testing and localized testing. I think just like Michael was referring to, how do you reach more people? Increasingly, this is going to be decentralized and self-testing. And Novara is a way of enabling accurate diagnosis and also a two-way conversation between either clinician, patient, and also grabbing large-scale epidemiological data as well. And it features in our role in the UK RTC. And it was because of this expertise, and Sam, if we jump on another slide, that we were invited to join the RTC. So without laboring the point, but it was only 4 months ago and so many things have changed. Let's just review the situation we were in April. Nobody really knew what the global impact was still going to be. UK was just about entering what was to become our eventual peak. We were already just tipping over 1,000 daily deaths. And really, while the phrase was led by the science, we still had a lack of basic understanding about what the immune response was to COVID-2, and especially in terms of the prevalence and the longevity of any neutralizing antibodies. And that's still an area where we are somewhat still in the dark. At the same time, Matt Hancock announced the UK government's national strategy for testing. Won't go into any political comments as to timing around this, but that 5-pillar strategy, which we as BBI fed into, but there was clearly a major focus on pillar 1, which was the PCR testing labs and the lighthouse labs that came and sprung up out of that and chasing the infamous 100,000 tests a day. Meanwhile, what we were seeing was a global demand for serology lab testing. So in other words, determining whether people had already been infected by the virus and had developed either antibodies to, which were either going to be protective or at least were in a less critical position. And that's where we started to see the first influx of first-gen tests, first of all from China, but then also, and it's sometimes quite easy to say that the Chinese tests were not so good, but also from the USA. All of these tests were largely poorly characterized. I think it's been well covered now how the regulatory bodies, by necessity, had to open up their processes to be able to bring through emergency use tests. But the fact was, in all my time in the industry, it really became a little bit of a Wild West as to the type of tests that were coming to market and some of the sales channels and distributors who were using them. So it was against that background, both political, health, economic, that BBI was invited to join the UK Rapid Test Consortium. Next slide, please, Sam. So the consortium was initiated really through Department for Health and Social Care, and it fell under pillar 3 of that COVID testing strategy, and that was rapid testing in the community for serology-based tests. 4 companies made up the consortium, not coincidentally from England, Wales, Scotland, and Ireland. It was led by Abingdon Health, based up in York and Darlington. And then along with BBI, some colleagues and collaborators at Omega Diagnostics in Scotland and also Seega Healthcare over in Northern Ireland. A key part of the consortium was leveraging and building on the work that had come from Professor John Bell's group in the University of Oxford, specifically on testing and some specific antigen formats that were claimed to enable identification of really strong and specific and possibly neutralizing immune responses. I'll come back to this at the tail end on some retrospectives. This probably wasn't borne out to be entirely the case, but nonetheless, it did give a strong basic academic foundation for where the development of the assay went. And the development started in mid-April. Thanks, Sam, if we move on. So as we sit here now in early September, what has been the output from the consortium? So I'm pleased to say that now there is available a professional use. It's an IgG detecting. It's not neutralizing antibody detecting. There's no specificity specifically for immune response there. And a 20-minute rapid blood test. Quite familiar to anybody who's been familiar with lateral flow over the decades, this is a very well established platform and very robust, and also, of course, very cost effective for the types of numbers and testing that we're talking about. You know, this was always going to have to be an economically viable test as well. And in fact, just as an aside, when we look at the volumes that are anticipated both for serology tests and antigen tests globally, we're probably looking at volumes that outstrip the total global manufacturing capacity of this sector. And we're seeing that in terms of the type of requests for contract manufacturing that BBI supports. So just back to the test again, it's branded under the ABC19 logo. Abingdon themselves are the legal manufacturers and owners of the test. The test uses the spike protein. Quite early on in the serology testing, there was quite some debate around the nucleocapsid protein versus the spike protein. This test uses solely the spike protein. It's a full-length trimerized version. And to the the success of the consortium, the test was developed from scratch, manufactured and brought through to CE marking in 3 months. Now, anybody who's familiar with any normal IVD or any product development process recognizes that exceptional times calls to exceptional timescales, and we were pleased to be part of that. It's a very well-performing test with sensitivity and specificity levels, and really very well characterized, over 200, 250 positive samples being put through this. I compare that again to some of the first generation tests that came through, where really we were seeing self-certified data on maybe only 20 or 30 patient samples. This is professional test use. Of course, its real application needs to be for self-testing. So the increased volume, and we anticipate that the consortium can manufacture between 10 and 20 million tests per annum. So we're just looking for regulatory clearance to bring that self-test through. And one of the key enablers of that is the associated smartphone. It's not just the reader, but guides the user through what is, for any novice layperson, quite an involved process, a process they wouldn't be used to. And this is where most errors can be introduced into point-of-care testing. So not only does it reduce that, it improves the objectivity about reading a test, and then also allows a mechanism to collect that data for public health benefits and patient communication as well. What do you do when you get that test result? So the consortium is still together, still working actively, and as I said, we're moving towards that self-test and that volume scale-up. Recruiting here in South Wales, as well as the other consortium locations around the country as well. Sam, if I can ask you to just move on to my final slide. So just a couple of points of perspectives, and from a BBI, purely BBI point of view, nothing either political or commercial being presented at this point. The first thing I would say, these have been difficult times for workforces all over the country. And, it's too easy to say a company relies and is only as strong as its people. Our people here, and I'll say publicly, have been absolutely fantastic. When the other companies have had to talk about furlough and redundancies, we've had superb response, and being part of a national effort has just really driven the morale within the business. People really feel they're contributing to such a fantastic purpose, and that's been good. And indeed, BBI have been pleased to be part of the Welsh Life Science response. I think to see those communities and networks really pull together in some really quite competitive situations as well has been one of those intangibles that we've taken very strongly from the past 4 months. And the other thing really has been, it has very much raised the profile and the appreciation of diagnostics. I think within the public psyche, when you've got front page tabloid stories about antibody testing or antigen testing or molecular testing, I think that is just good all round for healthcare services, and specifically the diagnostic sector. Pardon me. Just a couple of things which I'll finish off as, again, where should this happen again or other similar circumstances, the interaction with government has been beneficial, if not necessarily profitable, but beneficial and effective. But you have to be aware of the bureaucracy and the lack of interdepartmental alignment that is necessary. When you're operating as an organization yourself, you can make these decisions rapidly. Clearly, it shows that product development timescales can be accelerated if you've got the right reason and impetus to do so. But across, and this is still true within COVID testing, clinical sample procurement and characterization remains the main bottleneck. So you can do as much technical development as you want, but clinical validation is always going to be the time constraint. It's probably no secret. I mean, we collaborated with one of our closest competitors on this. That produced some challenges, especially when you're looking at each other's facilities under audit. But as long as you clearly define the key strengths and what everybody is doing, and in this case, BBI really focused on the gold reagents, the manufacture, and the smartphone environment technology, then it can work really quite well. One area which I think was always underhighlighted, underrepresented, the supply chains across diagnostics are really a breaking point. Basic materials that in other times would not cause an issue, swabs, plastic tubes, basic reagents, are a real challenge. And in this particular case, the industrial expertise of building supply chains for biologicals was an absolute essential. Where I say we are going is that all this effort around serology testing, I think we're already moving through now to second and third generation for antigen, rapid antigen testing. And we've seen some of the big diagnostic companies release point of care products only in the past week or so. So a lot of talk about where will diagnostics for COVID go? Is it an 18-month window? I think on the back of what we've heard on vaccines, on repeat vaccination, still we don't know what the immune response of individuals will be for their longevity. Most recent reports say we will still be seeing increases in diagnostic testing for COVID for 5 to 7 years rather than 5 to 7 months. And I think BBI is well positioned to hopefully be able to work with our customers and healthcare providers to be able to support that. Happy to take any questions after that. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much for that, Peter. That was really interesting little insight into the into what you've had to manage over the past few months. We've got a couple of questions in the chat, so I'll read those out to you in a second. But one question from me right from the start is, from a personal perspective, I was seconded to the Life Sciences Hub and working for the government side of trying to source the testing and the PPE products for during that period. And so one thing that would be of interest to me is, as a well-established, reputable company who've been working in the diagnostic sector for a number of years, how did you manage to cut through all of the noise where, I mean, we literally handled over 2,000 new inquiries, from a lot of which were from companies that nobody had ever heard of and from all over the world. So as an established, reputable company, how did you cut through all of that noise to actually get noticed by UK government?
Well, so I'll be completely honest. It's very easy, I think, to cast stones at government at this time. I think sometimes we underappreciate the scale of the challenge that they were facing, irrespective of whatever color. Unprecedented has been used a lot, but everybody recognizes that they were covering a lot of bases. That said, I think this did highlight the underappreciation of the diagnostic sector within the UK, and certainly a lot of lobbying from BIVDA since and other bodies to sort of say, well, we were in a poor position compared to some of the European countries because of an underappreciation and an underinvestment in those areas. I'll be completely honest, we were almost found by accident. A rapid response once we did come to the right conversations, but we're talking going, to the level of Matt Hancock and one below. It does help. We are private equity owned. We have some very influential and well-connected individuals within our private equity space. And quite honestly, they were able to open doors as well. That's not really the way it should happen. And certainly the response to new and innovative smaller companies, the likes of which have been presenting today and on other presentations, our sector needs to be able to communicate better upwards, but I think there needs to be better downward knowledge from government as well in doing so. So we leveraged everything. We leveraged networks, we leveraged our privilege, we leveraged our name, and even that was still a challenge. NHSX on the digital innovation side in particular were, I would say, slow rather than reluctant to understand the offering that an environment could give. So yeah, I think we were fortunate. Actually, I had a lot of sympathy for smaller, SMEs who have got probably arguably the most valuable offering to make, thinking outside the box and not able to get through those doors.
Absolutely, yes, and I did see that from the other side, and it was a challenge for smaller SMEs who might have had a lot to offer, but weren't able to demonstrate or prove their efficacy and value at that kind of pace. I do like what you said earlier. I'm going to use it, I'm afraid, the exceptional times, the call for exceptional time scales. So I think I'm going to steal that one off you for later presentations. So great, that's brilliant. I'll just check. I think we're okay on the questions, but if anybody wants to ask Peter another question, then please just add it to the chat and we'll catch up. In the meantime, I'm going to introduce Hugh Shermer and Victoria Whitchurch. Hugh is from Fujifilm, Strategic Relationships Manager, and Victoria is from the National Imaging Academy. And I think we're going to get a double-headed presentation from the two of you. Am I going to get Hugh?
Hi.
There we go.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Hand over to you.
Yeah, okay, let me just quickly share the screen here. Right, hope you can see that.
Yeah, we can see you and we can hear you and we can see your slides.
Perfect. So yeah, thanks a lot. When you said then, Gwyn, about pinching the exceptional times and exceptional time scales, I'd already pinched that in my mind ready to start this conversation. So I'm going to steal it again, unfortunately, just because I want to talk about something that was really kind of crammed a bit of work that we did right at the beginning of this pandemic side. So I'm Hugh Shermer from Fujifilm Medical Systems. I'm Strategic Relationship Manager. And I'll be talking with Victoria Whitchurch from the National Imaging Academy, who'll join in a little bit later. And I guess when all this stuff kicked off back kind of March time, there was a lot of pressure on the service, and we were asked to step in with a number of our partners to try to address some problems and try to head them off at the pass as we're going on. And so what I want to talk about today isn't necessarily anything to do with any innovation or something, but maybe the way that technology changed and how industry partners did rise to the challenge and managed to do things very differently and break a number of those supply chain barriers and react quite quickly to deliver a service there. So thank you for allowing us to talk about this now today. I'm not going to go into too much detail about Fujifilm, but we've been in Wales and a very large partner in radiology, particularly in Wales, and that's what we're going to talk about today, for over 20 years, and we have a national contract to supply radiology imaging and radiology devices directly to Wales and the Welsh Government. And if you have an X-ray taken in Wales, it'll hit one of our systems somewhere. So we predominantly manage digitization of radiology, and this covers, as I said, everywhere in Wales. So just a couple of statistics before I go too much further. We've got one national framework agreement with the government in Wales. We cover all 7 health boards, the National Cancer Centre of Velindre, public health screening, and then the teaching academy, which we'll come on to a little bit later. All the hospitals in Wales have a number of imaging devices, including CT scanners, ultrasound scanners, MRI scanners, just general digitization. And the majority of these aren't Fuji, some of them are, but these all feed into our systems for the digitization of these images. And we have over 850 diagnostic workstations, like you'll see on the screen there. So these are about 400 of them, as you see on the screen there, and another 400 odd are a little bit less that are used for clinical review rather than diagnostics. And within our systems in Wales, we have the total number of studies that are stored on our systems at about 30.8 million studies, which equates to about 2.6 billion images. So for a nation of 3.4 million patients, that's a lot of images that are all stored on our systems. And as I said, everything's available within 2 seconds to the desktop within the hospitals. So this is the key part of what we were going to discuss now. So just moving on. There we are. So the problem we had when COVID came along was that how do we protect a radiology workforce, particularly radiologists, who don't necessarily need to be in hospitals during the pandemic? So all of our systems are really geared to managing all of these within a hospital. And in general, not playing it down, but radiologists tend to report on pictures, and those pictures don't necessarily need to be seen only within the hospitals. So we've been looking at doing some testing and trying to work out why they couldn't report from home. Up until fairly recently, bandwidth at home and the technologies being used on thick applications meant that the bandwidth wasn't the best for managing this. But we were in the process of doing some new testing and bringing some new technology into making this a lot thinner. And we actually had some test servers running in a test environment back at the beginning of the year to see whether we could do this before COVID even came along. And then, as I said, this would allow this to be a lot thinner over home broadband. Traditionally, if you go to a hospital, a radiologist's desk will look a bit like this. They've got 2 high-end diagnostic monitors. They're the devices there on the right there, and then a workflow monitor on the left, and it's run by a traditional kind of large powered desktop PC, which you see over there on the right. A microphone to dictate a report, and then this is all managed and goes off to a central system where the reports are then distributed around the health board and indeed around Wales. We were asked to try to find a way of taking that and putting this into a radiologist's house. So we've done some work previously on combining these new technologies with the manufacturer, meant that these large screens could be combined into one, and investing in some fairly large, powerful laptops meant that we could reduce that size into something a lot smaller. And then with the technology that we've got on top of it, that could make the whole workflow work a lot better over home broadband. So what happened was, as we all know, lockdown started on the 23rd of March. Initially, there were 40 key radiologists in Wales were identified as needing these home reporting workstations. But the problem we had was all industries were locking down at this point. So supply of these laptops in particular were getting very difficult, especially the high-end ones were getting difficult to procure. There was a global shortage of laptops because of this, and everybody was moving to working from home. So we went off to our suppliers, Dell and ISO, and asked how they could help support. Luckily, ISO, who provide those high-end monitors, they had a number of these in stock ready in the UK, so they were able to deliver them almost immediately. But Dell had a 4-week lead time from factory, which at the time was a bit ironic because they were coming from China. But Dell were aware of a large order that was going to National Grid. Fujifilm had never had any kind of contact with National Grid in the past, apart from the electrons being used to use our home TVs and all that kind of stuff. But we've never had any connection with National Grid. So this is a piggyback from Fuji into Dell. Dell, knowing that a large order had already gone and been placed and shipped to National Grid, they got in touch with National Grid, and within a day, National Grid were delivering this 120 of these laptops straight to the Imaging Academy in Bridgend. And then over the course of about 4 or 5 days, a lot of these were imaged and configured and calibrated. All these monitors need to be calibrated, batched into groups of systems, and then distributed. And we managed to get all this done by the 31st of March, really, for when everybody was kicking off, getting things ready for COVID. And you can guess that with all of these industries, it was at the end of the financial year as well. So everybody was flat out trying to do everything else and not necessarily focused on doing this kind of work. But it was great to see these all the partners pulling together and doing that. So the benefits of using the Imaging Academy was there was a great central location, and it was non-clinical, but it also had, they give us access to some of their large meeting rooms. You can see some of our engineers there. There was a great production line of the kit coming in one end, going out the other end, all configured. The Academy at the moment provides access to all, because they do the reporting for every health board in Wales. So it was fortunate they had internet access to all of these sites where all the testing could be done to each one of these health boards remotely, without us having to send engineers into those areas. And it was such a large area that we could social distance as well to do the work. You can see the whole bank of workstations there. Some radiologists did collect their systems from the Academy, but some had to find alternative ways of distributing them. So a number of the workstations were chucked in the back of that and distributed around South Wales in particular. And then others were batched. Well, these were the ones that were batch delivered to the hospitals. So just a couple of quotes here. From George Anderson, who was the head of IT at National Grid. So he was just glad to support and divert and make other alternate arrangements for the laptops that had been delivered to National Grid. And then from our point of view, it was great to see that despite the problems with supply chain and normal industries not necessarily traditionally talking to each other, a lot of these boundaries barriers being broken, and the hardware being distributed and taken down to the Academy there. And then finally from Dr. Sally Bolt at Cwm Taf, who was one of the beneficiaries of one of these devices, to then be able to safeguard herself, work in a safe home environment, and increase the throughput during this time. So altogether, I think it's a good example of different industries just breaking down those supply chain barriers, forgetting about a lot of the bureaucracy, and just getting on and delivering these services. So that's it from my side, I think. I'll pass you across to Victoria now.
Okay, thanks, Hugh. If you could just stop sharing, I'll share my screen. Okay.
You're all good to go.
Lovely. Right, so I'm Victoria Whitchurch. I'm the manager of the National Imaging Academy Wales. So I'm just going to be giving you some background about the Academy, an outline of what we do and how we work with the diagnostic images across imaging services across Wales, but also to outline some of the relationships that we've established and how these contributed to how we were able to support the services throughout the pandemic. So the Imaging Academy is based in Bridgend, and we opened our doors in August 2018. And we were established with £3.4 million worth of funding from Welsh Government. And our ongoing revenue is actually supported by all of the health boards in NHS Wales. So we truly are an NHS Wales organisation, and we have a reach into diagnostic imaging services, but also the workforce across the whole of Wales. I'm sure everybody's aware of the challenges related to workforce issues in the NHS, and diagnostic imaging isn't any different. There's increasing demand every year, and there is a significant shortage actually in the number of professionals that are being trained and recruited. So the Imaging Academy was established to assist with this shortfall and the undersupply of imaging workforce in Wales. So we were charged with increasing the capacity for radiology training, but also to support the professional development of other imaging professionals by establishing new courses and CPD sessions. So we were set up as a dedicated training facility. We have meeting rooms, conference spaces and lecture theatres, which allow us to run our own meetings, but also host training and host external courses and events for other parties from industry, NHS or academia. We have dedicated ultrasound suite with 3 ultrasound rooms housing scanners from various suppliers. We have simulation suite with 5 ultrasound simulators covering ultrasound as well as point of care ultrasound. But our main training space is actually in the 3 Fuji workstation rooms that we have. And the Fuji workstations that Hugh has already shown you, they enable us access to the PACS systems across NHS Wales, and it allows our trainees to train on the systems that they're actually using in their local health boards. So our primary focus will always be on training, but we've got an expanding portfolio in collaboration, innovation and research. And since we've opened, we've had the opportunity to work with some interesting and some quite unique partners. And this has assisted us obviously to deliver training, but also to help us expand our research and innovation programs across the NHS academic and industry boundaries. And this is something that's quite important to us. We often find that that industry and academia actually lead the way in innovation and research in the UK. And a specific example of this would be artificial intelligence, which is becoming a huge factor in radiology. Now, there can be a perceived lack of activity in the clinical NHS in some of these areas, and it's likely to be due to the workload or the demand, meaning that they just don't have headspace to undertake this sort of work. But it could also be that there's a level of fear of the unknown, there's a lack of understanding or a lack of interest, and this is the gap that needs to be addressed, and this is becoming a strategically important part and a role of the Academy, because we're becoming a natural hub now for engagement, and we're able to act as a facilitator within NHS Wales. So that's really our usual business, and everything was going along great until for 18 months. We were supporting increasing numbers in trainees in the Radiology South Wales training scheme, and we were achieving good exam results. We were expanding our training, course and research activities, and we were building new relationships. And then came COVID and everything changed overnight. So all our training courses, all our events, all of our research ceased, and our trainers and trainees were redeployed back into clinical areas. And this is really where our collaborations and relationships really came into their own. And what we were finding was the relationships that we'd established actually allowed us to utilise the Academy, the team and the resources to support the struggling clinical and business services of the NHS. And so overnight, our usual business just changed totally. We're quite an accessible site, and we're not a clinical site. So we were able to work with a local health board to set up a COVID-19 testing centre, and this allowed NHS and other essential workers to be tested. Our training, conference and IT facilities allowed us to support a number of COVID-specific training activities, both remotely and on site. So we worked with clinicians across the health boards to develop image interpretation training sessions, and this was delivered to doctors that were being redeployed into COVID areas. We were able to host on-site training sessions for non-clinical nursing staff that were also being redeployed back into clinical areas. We could offer support to academic colleagues, providing them training rooms and VC facilities that ensured that their undergraduate students continue to have training, support and mentorship. And we obviously collaborated with industry as well. So we worked with Intelligent Ultrasound on a large project. They were kind enough to loan us a Bodyworks Eve point of care ultrasound simulator. And with them, we developed an ultrasound lung training package that was designed to upskill practitioners to diagnose COVID on ultrasound lung scans. And we trained more than 50 professionals, many of whom were actually redeployed into the field hospitals in Wales. And they came from a variety of backgrounds. So we saw respiratory, acute and emergency physicians, intensivists, anaesthetists, medical physicists, as well as radiologists and sonographers. But some of our greatest achievements throughout the pandemic were realised through our collaboration with Fujifilm. So with 57 Fuji workstations on site that have access to the PACS systems across Wales and the capability to report from most of these health boards, we were able to open the Academy as a reporting hub. So it offered a safe working environment for those staff that maybe didn't need to be in the clinical work area or had other issues that they wanted to be out of that clinical site. And this offer was accepted by 3 of the local health boards. And then when concerns were being raised regarding the VPN and network capability required for the home working, we were able to collaborate with NHS Wales Health Collaborative to set up a second reporting hub that was on standby just in case those concerns were realised. Thankfully, they weren't. And Hugh has already detailed the ambitious programme that Fuji undertook, supplying the health boards with the home reporting workstations. And we were just really pleased that we could offer them that safe location to receive and build and test that new equipment. And it also allowed a safe environment to allow local colleagues on site to test and quality assure the workstations before they were distributed. So now, following lockdown, well, we've resumed all of our radiology training, our emergency medicine inductions and our academy courses, and our research projects are starting to resume. And like everybody else, we're adapting to the new methods of training delivery, both face-to-face and remotely. In terms of the future, well, we'll just continue to work and support the diagnostic imaging services and its workforce wherever we can. But if there was a positive that come out of this pandemic, well, for us, it's definitely strengthened the relationships that we have with our current collaborators and partners, but it's also opened the Academy up to other imaging partners and professionals. And this has given us an exciting new opportunities that are coming over the next year. So just for my last slide, just on the same theme, there's some details about the Imaging Academy. If you want any more information or you feel there's something that we can assist you with, then please just contact us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Victoria, and thanks to Hugh. What a tremendous example of industry, the NHS working together, and really another superb example of possibly doing things that could have been done before COVID, in terms of people working remotely, in terms of the timescales that were achieved, but maybe the pandemic ironically brought down the barriers to actually achieving some of those changes. Do you, very quickly to both yourself and Hugh, do you think some of those changes will stick? Do you think the remote working, and the timescales, do you think will be something that we get to keep post COVID?
Shall I go first, Hugh?
Yeah, go
on. For me, I hope so. There are certain aspects of the pandemic, as you said, that change the way we work, and actually, it is maybe more efficient way to work. And what we need to do is make sure that we harness the positive aspects of it, but safely go back to the other areas that we need to. And that's the key. It's finding the happy medium really where it is safe, but we are becoming efficient and keeping the things that work.
And Hugh, would you like to?
Yeah, I think the home working is something that had been discussed for a while, and I think this COVID was the kind of thing that just tipped it over the edge a little bit. A number of things came together at the same time. Was COVID and the technology then allowed it to work a little bit better than it had in the past. Things, you know, just natural progression of software going down a thin route to make it work a lot better at home. So I'd like to think that this stays for a while now. There's a lot of radiologists with this kit in their house. It's going to be very difficult to get it back out of their houses. Yeah, I can see this working. And also on top of that, it's the benefits of the reduced or the quicker turnaround of reports and stuff that the NHS is seeing as well.
Thank you very much for those two. And just one more question to you, Hugh. Giancarlo says, do you actually play all of those instruments? Yeah.
I just play the banjo really, really badly.
Yes, you do, but you play them badly. Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Hugh. Right, we're going to head off by the wonders of Zoom. We're going to head off to Mid Wales now and to CellPath, and Siobhan Fairgreaves, scientific writer for CellPath, is going to provide a brief presentation on adapting to the pandemic. So Siobhan, are you there?
Hi, yes, hello all. I'm just going to share my screen with you, or I'm going to try, and then we'll... Okay, hello everyone. So my name's Siobhan Fairgreaves. I'm presenting on behalf of CellPath. For those of you who don't know us, we are based in Newtown, Mid Wales, and we supply goods, consumables, equipment and services to hospital laboratories, other private laboratories as well, all around the world. Our industry is predominantly cellular pathology, which means we are often heavily involved in cancer diagnostics. So through this presentation, we'll be talking through sort of the actions that CellPath's taken since March. In effect, I expect this will be sort of a case study of other members of sort of SMEs. You'll probably find this quite relatable, but for some of the larger organisations who've spoken today, just might be a bit of interest into what's happened here in Mid Wales. So firstly, we'll be talking about how CellPath have protected the people that work for us. So as soon as the government guidance was issued, we made the move to work from home. As was mentioned in the presentation previously, this did obviously involve a rapid scramble for equipment because we predominantly are office-based and all work in the same space normally. Luckily, we were able to do this very quickly and found that people have adapted really well to working in their variety of home offices. The most important thing for us in this time was making sure that we could do this quickly. Our customers, being predominantly hospitals in the UK, aren't necessarily always able to hold massive stockpiles of equipment or goods, which means that we must continue uninterrupted supply or things will grind to a halt very quickly. We were fortunate that this was able to happen, and particularly our customer care team were very busy through this time. For those of our workforce who did have to stay on site, those who work in production, warehousing or tissue archiving, getting rid of the office staff, getting them sent home allowed us to have a bit of extra space, which meant that social distancing could be maintained, as well as provision of PPE and sort of any other measures that were needed became a little bit easier. By later on utilising the furlough scheme, we've also therefore been able to keep everybody employed throughout, and we are set to see this continue going forwards. So after our people comes our products, really. We were aware very quickly of a local shortage in industries such as schools, funeral parlours, care homes, that sort of thing, of sanitising products. One of the main things that we've all become very used to is hand sanitizer, so that was Cellitizer for us. As we have chemical production facilities available on our site in Mid Wales, we were able to quickly turn these around and started producing hand sanitizer. Once we'd dealt with the sort of urgent, pressing local need, as well as supplying our own workforce with as much as they needed, we were able to then formulate this as a product to put on our website. So we're now, it's available in 2 different sizes. It allows people, our current customers, to add this on when they're already shopping with us. Another technology that we are happy to have at Cellpath is our 3D printers. This is predominantly used for us in research and development. So it's not something that we're actually using all that much in the production of our goods normally. But when the patterns became available to make face shields, we also were able to produce them and again donate to local businesses and organisations. Another way we were able to help our customers was to add in a surface steriliser to our product range. This product meant that customers didn't then have to look at adding in a new supplier. For those who are involved with NHS businesses or NHS supply chain, this can sometimes be quite a lengthy process. So if a customer already had us set up to supply something else, by adding in products like the sanitisers and sterilisers, it meant that things could move a bit quicker for them, as it obviously needed to. We were very fortunate that we were able to sort of offer so many things to local businesses and groups for free, which did allow some of them to continue operation or even to reopen. So we do supply sanitising products now to Powys County Council, which is the county that we're situated in, and certainly for the teachers and other staff in the local school, this was essential for their ability to reopen. Our customers are predominantly those who work in laboratories within the NHS, certainly in the UK, as well as private. This is an often overlooked industry or an overlooked part of the NHS, and those who work in labs obviously deserve our thanks just as much as everybody else. And one way that Cellpath was able to help with that was that we've been able to offer a price freeze to our NHS customers. And it's just to show our thanks for sharing the incredible burden that they've done throughout the pandemic. In terms of those of our colleagues who have had to continue to work on site, things did change quite rapidly at Cellpath. We are all based in one space. One of our great benefits is that we can collaborate and work together, with the office staff predominantly sent home overnight. This did change the working environment quite significantly. So our managing directors were able to work out a 10% bonus pay for those who did continue to work on site, which was obviously greatly appreciated by those who received it, but importantly, enthusiastically supported by those who did have the opportunity to work from home and continue in their employment. We obviously have continued to work together at Cellpath throughout this, but as you can see from the quote on the screen just now, we were also supported by the local community, and they were very grateful for what we could do. It's back to that timescales thing. It was being able to turn things around very quickly is, I think, what's really helped. As you can see there from Sam, we're part of our Newtown community, and we're very proud to be able to fulfil our responsibility and the things we were able to supply and to step up when we could. It was good to be part of that. Looking forward, we are obviously hoping to continue to retain the staff that we've managed to keep on throughout, well, since March, and we've even been fortunate enough recently to offer secure employment to another 2 members of staff from the local area. And this is an expansion to our customer support teams, as well as to our research and development team. So we're hopeful that this will be bright things to come for their futures as well. And obviously we will continue to support our customers. Nobody knows what's coming next. There will be new needs. There's going to be a major push, we expect, on catching up with some of the missed tests in cancer diagnostics. Things that have been pushed back may now be condensed. Our customers will have additional pressures, and we'll be ready to support and accommodate them when we know what they are. And we'll continue to look forward to the future of growing CellPath. Our fourth tissue archiving warehouse has been able to, construction has largely continued throughout, and hoping to continue embracing digital technologies with hopefully the launch of our own webinar series by the end of 2020. And thank you all very much. And if there's any questions, I will endeavour to answer them, though they may be better suited to colleagues, so I may have to take your details and get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you know, I mean, I don't think the social responsibility side and looking after the community around you is any surprise to those of us who know CellPath, because we do know how important social responsibility is to the organisation, and that stems to the life science industry community as well as your immediate geography. So thank you for sharing that with us. That was excellent. One question to you very quickly is, given that you are in quite a rural setting, and so some people probably have to travel quite a long way to get to work, will some of the home working habits stick, and will they actually prove to be a benefit for the organisation?
I'll speak from personal experience. Due to a military attachment, I'm now working for CellPath in Newtown from Oxfordshire. So yes, I think we will be seeing that to stick. That will continue, I expect. Whether it's permanent, whether it's for everybody, obviously we do need to take into account it's not always easy to work from home. A lot of people at CellPath might have spent many years have spent many years in that place, and they like it. So I'm hopeful, as a lot of us have said, that we'll find a happy medium that'll suit continued work as well as well-being.
Absolutely, I think that's what we're hearing from a lot of people, a mixed model, with some people wanting to work in an office environment and others wanting to work from home might be the future as we move forward. So thank you very much for that. That was an excellent presentation. So I'm going to move on now to our final presentation, introducing a new person to the Medi Wales network and community, Neil Mercer, Vice President of Inovia UK, but a very familiar company because Neil is representing DTR Medical from Swansea, which has been active participant in Medi Wales network for a very long time, and has also been in the news over the last few months in demonstrating their response to the COVID-19 challenge. So welcome to Neil, and it'll be great to hear from you about what you've been doing. And you're on mute, Neil.
Can you hear me now?
There we go. That's it. Perfect.
Right, sorry about that. Well, thank you very much, Gwyn, and thank you, Sam, for doing the slides, and thank you very much, Medi Wales, for the invite. It's nice to meet you all. And Andy, who formerly did this position, spoke very highly of you and your organisation and the work you do for Wales and the community. So I look forward to working with you in the future. I look after the UK businesses of Inovia Medical. And as you know, every business around the world was significantly affected by what happened to us. And I want to just tell you a little bit about our story and how it affected us and how we dealt with it as a medical device manufacturer. So just going on to the second slide there. Inovia Medical is made up of 4 companies. We are PE owned, similar to BBI Group. We have 2 in the USA and 2 in the UK. I represent the 2 companies in the UK. We've got DTR Medical, which you are familiar with, down in Swansea, and we've got Network Medical, it's based in Ripon, North Yorkshire. From a medical device manufacturing perspective, we look after primarily ENT, ophthalmology, aesthetic, gynecology, and sterile processing. We're a global company. We export to about 75 different countries worldwide. And we split it into 3 segments. So we have Asia, Europe, and the USA. Now, a lot of companies in the UK, which are just domestic companies, probably didn't feel the effects of COVID until March time, maybe even as late as April for some companies. We felt the effects actually come a little bit earlier from that because of the business that we did in Asia. So we started to feel this come through in February, and certainly towards late February, early March, we were seeing a significant downturn in our normal business. What we did was we worked very closely with our team in product development in the USA, but also we had a great new product development team down in Swansea. So between the two teams, we looked to see what it was that we could do and how we could change our business and adapt to the eventual unpredicted problems that were going to occur. And what we did was we worked very much in developing a face shield or a face visor, depending on your terminology. So on the next slide, you can see that what we had to do was our Swansea new product development team and engineers, they switched their usual development from single-use medical devices to designing and developing. It was actually one of the first UK, UK CE marked face visors. We did that from start to finish in about 3 weeks. Now, largely that was down to the way in which we could work with our notified bodies and the way in which we had the fast tracking for the PPE. But that did allow us to develop this visor and react very quickly for the demands that were being placed on the UK PPE. What we were able to offer was, and what we wanted to offer, was a UK manufactured visor, which was UK sourced or had UK sourced raw materials. And also we were able to offer it as a medical device manufacturer. But more importantly, what we were trying to do was we were trying to safeguard all our jobs in the UK. And in actual fact, what we were able to do was we were able to create additional jobs, both in Swansea and Ripon, giving them key worker status whilst we were developing the face visors. On the next screen, you can see our first orders were received for 260,000 face visors, and we completed our first order by the 4th of May. Shortly after this, we were awarded a DHSC contract for the NHS to supply 1.6 million face visors direct to the NHS before the end of November. Now, interestingly, again, one point that Peter mentioned was that the difficulty in small and medium-sized businesses is of actually bringing your product to market. It's all well and good that we were able to develop this product, but bringing it to market was actually our greatest challenge. We were able to work with our local politicians, both in Wales and also in Yorkshire. And in fact, we ended up going through the press, and we were on national TV as well to get our products out there and known that we were manufacturing. We were manufacturing the equivalent of 50,000 a week for 26 weeks. And now we've just dropped down to 25,000 for the last 12 weeks on the run up to the end of November. So whilst we were manufacturing face visors in the early days, we switched all of our medical device manufacturing to making visors so we could keep up with the demand in the early days. If we switch on to the next slide, you can see how there was a significant change to our business and operations, as you can imagine. All of our administrative staff were actually now engaged in making face shields and visors themselves. So what we did do, not only did we use our clean rooms and white rooms that we had for normal medical device manufacturing, we actually quickly, in a period, I think it was about 2 weeks, changed our large open plan offices, which you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, and made them into white rooms and production areas for face shields and visors whilst we were manufacturing. So it was a great achievement. It was something we did very, very quickly, and we were able to react and respond as we had to. If you look on the next slide, you can see the effects of our normal business. So in January, February, March, we were manufacturing normal business 100% as we would expect to. In April, after the visor had been designed and had got the CE mark and we were able to manufacture, you can see there our normal base business dropped down to just under 20%, and then in May, just over 10%. And you can see how our normal business has been really quite small throughout this period right now. September and October, we expect our normal business to be around about the 50% levels, but we've still got a long way to go before we can get up to our normal manufacturing capabilities. Now, this is a spread between Yorkshire and Swansea there that you can see. On to the next page.
Hello, Neil. Have we lost you? So I think we've lost Neil for a second there. We'll give him a couple of minutes to rejoin. In the meantime, I'll maybe mention a few of the things that I was going to make points I was going to make in my closing remarks. In that way that Neil won't lose his time when he comes back on to speak. Just to remind you that this is part of a program of events, and the next one is on the 10th of September, so that's Thursday, at 1 o'clock, and that's when we'll be giving the NHS centre stage to showcase their case studies of how they've been responding to COVID, and obviously, you know, they really have been at the forefront of this, and there's been some incredibly heroic efforts coming from our NHS over the last few months. So that will be a really interesting presentation. But we'll also be asking the NHS colleagues how they've worked with industry, how they've worked with academia, so that we link these three events together. And then on the 22nd of September, we're going to take a look at our digital part of our community, which is an ever-growing side to health technology. Obviously, in the press in terms of track and trace and big data analytics in respect of COVID. But an awful lot of other things going on. So it'll be great to catch up with the digital companies on the 22nd of September. So 10th of September for the NHS, 22nd of September for digital, and that will be the conclusion of our LifeStories live program of events. And by that time, we'll have entertained probably around 300. Delegates, organisations within our sector, and we've probably have had between 30 and 40 speakers. So real opportunity to understand what's going on in the rest of the sector, to network, and to get that publicity out there. One of my take homes from today's event will be Peter Corrish's comment about the visibility of our sector, the visibility of established companies. From where I was sitting during this COVID crisis and the response to it, there were an awful lot of new companies emerging who were not part of the traditional life science sector. They were seeking to respond to the pandemic, some of them very successfully. Some of them completely converting and repurposing their manufacturing facilities and responding in the manufacture of PPE and test equipment and doing a superb job. Others not so successfully. There were an awful lot of opportunistic inquiries made to the NHS, which really did create a lot of noise and a lot of challenge in respect of sorting out the well-established, certified professional companies from people who were trying to take advantage of the opportunity. And I think it falls to us to make sure that we are fully aware. We're the experts in who are already in the sector, who are ready to respond, who can undertake the R&D work at the quality and with the safety levels that we would expect as a sector. So Medi Wales has got a role and a job to do moving forward, as has and I don't think this COVID is definitely not behind us as we're speaking now. So the challenges for all of us moving forward are going to continue. And some of the benefits working from home for rural factories, digital advancements, actually taking advantage of digital innovation that was available prior to COVID, but really using COVID as the motivation to move those things into the market and actually utilize them and get the value and that we could get out of them, and I think we're going to move forward in that respect as well. We're going to carry on learning how to use remote working expertise, remote working technology, and I don't think we're going to go back to where we were either in the healthcare sector or in the work environment as a whole. I am coming to the end of my thoughts as we speak. Neil hasn't returned to us, so I'm assuming whatever happened at his end in terms of his connection was terminal for the time being, and he's probably not going to be able to join us. So I'm going to close the formal proceedings there. Again, just a reminder that on the 10th of September we have our NHS seminar. 22nd of September we have our digital webinar. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave the webinar open so that we can all use the chat facility so that people can engage through the chat, ask questions, and if the panelists have left us, then we'll make sure that questions get through to them, and if they haven't, then if they're still in the room, then we will ask them to answer the questions. But I'm just going to look at my colleague now to see whether we're going to get Neil back. He's trying, so I'm going to say thank you to everybody from there, and I'm going to sign off, and if we get Neil in the next minute or so, then he's welcome to continue. Ow. Not exactly how I wanted it to end, but I think he only had 1 or 2 slides left.
So, sorry, Gwen's just come out now. Their server has gone down.
Okay. So I'll give him his apologies, and we'll yeah. So we've been on the phone to Neil. He's got some server issues, so I don't think we're going to see Neil for his closing remarks. But I think he was just about finished on his presentation there. What I really should do before we finish is a few thank yous. Thank you so much to the speakers who've given their time today. Some really tremendous case study presentations on how the response to COVID-19 has created innovation, a move forward, and a step change in a lot of people's business activity. So thank you for case studying those successes, and thank you to Isabel and to Sam. Izzy's done everything to get us to the point of delivering today's event, and then Sam has been working in the background to make sure that the technology at our end hasn't fallen down. And on his behalf, I would just point out that he had no control over the server that went down. So thank you very much to the speakers. Thank you very much to the team at MediWales. And as I say, I will leave the channel open if anybody has any more questions, but thank you very much, and see you on Thursday.